The Galactic Council's declaration echoed across the stars. Humans were now the most wanted fugitives in the universe. Their crime? Advancing too quickly, expanding too aggressively. The Council's solution? Hire the galaxy's deadliest bounty hunters to catch them all. Enter the Kazan, led by the infamous Antares. Known for their ruthless efficiency, they accepted the contract without hesitation. Their first target? A lone cargo ship piloted by Alan Rogers, former Earth Special Forces operative turned interstellar delivery man. Alan's ship, the Starlight Express, cruised through the void, ferrying supplies to a remote human colony. The ship's panels flickered with data streams, mapping the safest route through contested space. Alan's eyes darted between screens, his military training keeping him alert for any signs of danger. The attack came without warning. The Kazan ship materialized from the darkness, its weapons already charged. Alan's hands flew across the controls, initiating evasive maneuvers. The Starlight Express lurched and spun, narrowly avoiding the first volley of plasma bolts. Antares watched from his command chair, a grudging respect growing as he observed Alan's piloting skills. The human ship danced through space, outmaneuvering the larger Kazan vessel, despite being severely outgunned. "Capture him alive," Antares ordered, his curiosity piqued. "I want to know how these humans tick." The Kazan ship's tractor beam engaged, its energy field enveloping the Starlight Express. Alan felt his ship shudder as it was pulled towards the enemy vessel. His mind raced, searching for options. With a grim smile, he reached for a hidden panel beneath his seat. As the Starlight Express was swallowed by the Kazan ship's docking bay, Alan initiated the self-destruct sequence. Alarms blared, giving him precious seconds to reach the escape pod. He sprinted through the corridors, the ship's hull groaning around him. The explosion rocked the Kazan vessel, sending shockwaves through its superstructure. In the chaos, Alan's escape pod slipped away undetected, its small profile lost against the debris field. Antares stood amidst the smoke and sparking consoles of his damaged bridge, fury etched across his face. He'd been outsmarted, outmaneuvered by a mere human. His obsession grew, fixating on Alan as the key to understanding humanity's unexpected capabilities. Meanwhile, Alan's pod hurtled towards a nearby planet. As it breached the atmosphere, he wrestled with the controls, aiming for a clearing in the dense alien forest below. The impact rattled his bones, but he emerged alive, immediately activating his distress beacon. Stumbling from the wreckage, Alan found himself face-to-face with an abandoned alien structure. Its architecture was unlike anything he'd seen before, hinting at advanced technology within. With the Kazan surely in pursuit, he knew he needed every advantage he could get. As Alan explored the outpost, searching for anything he could use to fortify his position, Antares and his crew worked feverishly to repair their ship. The Galactic Council's demands for results grew more insistent with each passing hour, adding to the tension aboard the Kazan vessel. Neither Alan nor Antares realized it yet, but their confrontation on this remote world would ignite a chain of events that would reshape the galaxy's balance of power. The hunter and the hunted, each driven by their own motivations, were about to embark on a journey that would challenge everything they thought they knew about themselves and each other. Alan's fingers danced across the alien control panel, his eyes scanning the unfamiliar symbols. Days had passed since his crash landing, each hour spent unraveling the secrets of the abandoned outpost. The structure's advanced technology yielded to his persistent efforts, revealing layers of defensive capabilities. A shimmering energy field enveloped the facility, its pale blue glow barely visible against the alien sky. Alan nodded with satisfaction as he calibrated the last of the early warning sensors. The perimeter was secure, but he knew it was only a matter of time before the Kazan arrived. Deep within the outpost, Alan's exploration led him to a hidden chamber. The room hummed with dormant energy, its walls lined with intricate circuitry. At its center stood a pillar of light, pulsing gently. Alan approached cautiously, his hand hovering over the strange controls. A surge of power coursed through the room as Alan activated the system. The pillar of light coalesced into a holographic form, a tall, slender being with elongated features and eyes that held ancient wisdom. "Greetings, biological entity," the hologram spoke, its voice resonating with an otherworldly timbre. "I am Zara, the artificial intelligence of this research facility." Alan's eyes widened. "Zara, what is this place? Who created you?" "This outpost was constructed by the progenitors, a species that vanished eons ago," Zara explained. "They were masters of bioengineering, studying the genetic makeup of countless species across the galaxy." As Alan absorbed this information, alarms blared throughout the facility. He rushed to the control room, Zara's holographic form following. The sensors displayed a large ship entering the planet's atmosphere. The Kazan had arrived. "Zara, can you cloak the outpost?" Alan asked urgently. "Affirmative. Initiating cloaking protocols." Zara responded. The facility shimmered and seemed to melt into the surrounding landscape, becoming invisible to both the naked eye and scanning technology. Aboard the Kazan ship, Antares growled in frustration as the planet's surface came into view. "Where is he? Our scanners should have picked up his crash site by now." A cold voice cut through the tension on the bridge. "Perhaps your methods are inadequate, Antares." Thax, the newly assigned supervisor from the Galactic Council, stepped forward. His reptilian features twisted into a sneer. "The Council grows impatient with your lack of progress." Antares bristled at the criticism but held his tongue. "Prepare for ground deployment," he ordered his crew. "We'll find this human the old-fashioned way." As the Kazan search team spread across the alien terrain, Alan watched their movements on the outpost's monitoring systems. He turned to Zara, his mind racing with possibilities. "You mentioned the progenitors studied various species. What do you know about humans?" Zara's holographic eyes seemed to sparkle with interest. The progenitors possessed extensive data on early human biology and genetics. Their research suggests a possible link between progenitor intervention and the rapid advancement of your species. Alan's heart raced at the implications. Could this explain why we've progressed so quickly? Why the Galactic Council sees us as a threat? Before Zara could respond, the sensors beeped urgently. Two groups of Kazon were approaching from different directions, one led by Antares, the other by Thax. "Now we need a way to neutralize them without casualties," Alan muttered, pacing the control room. Suddenly he stopped, an idea forming. "Zara, you have data on Kazan biology, right? And access to the progenitors' bioengineering technology?" "Affirmative," Zara confirmed. "Then let's create a non-lethal bioweapon," Alan proposed, "something to incapacitate them temporarily." As Alan and Zara worked feverishly to synthesize the bioweapon, Antares trudged through the dense alien forest. His eyes darted from tree to tree, years of experience as a bounty hunter guiding his instincts. Something about this area felt off, too quiet, too undisturbed. Antares held up a hand, signaling his team to halt. He crouched, examining the ground. A faint impression in the soil, barely noticeable to the untrained eye, caught his attention. "He's close," Antares whispered. Meanwhile, Thax led his group with brutal efficiency, cutting a wide path through the vegetation. "Spread out," he barked at the Kazan soldiers. "Find me that human, or you'll answer to the Galactic Council." In orbit above the planet, a sleek human military vessel slipped into the system, its stealth technology masking its approach. Captain Sarah Boyd stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the Kazan ship in low orbit. "Any sign of Rogers?" she asked her communications officer. "Negative, Captain. No response to our encrypted hails," the officer replied. Sarah's teeth gritted. "Maintain stealth protocols. We need to assess the situation before we make our move." Back in the outpost, Alan put the finishing touches on the bioweapon, a fine mist contained in several dispersal canisters. He turned to Zara, drive etched on his face. "How long will this incapacitate them?" "Based on average Kazon physiology, the effects should last approximately 6 hours," Zara answered. Alan nodded, securing the canisters to his belt. "That should buy us enough time." He moved to the outpost's entrance, preparing to face his pursuers. Outside, Antares had reached the edge of the cloaked perimeter. He paused, sensing something amiss in the air around him. His hand reached out, fingers brushing against an invisible barrier. "Clever," Antares murmured, a grudging respect in his voice. He activated his communicator. "All units converge on my position. I found something." As the Kazan closed in from all sides, Alan took a deep breath. He looked up at the alien sky, knowing that somewhere above, the fate of humanity hung in the balance. With Zara's knowledge and the progenitor's technology at his disposal, he had a chance to turn the tables on his pursuers and uncover the truth about humanity's place in the galaxy. Alan's hand hovered over the control to deactivate the cloaking field. The moment of confrontation had arrived, and the next few minutes would determine not just his fate, but potentially the course of human history. History. Alan took a deep breath, steadied his nerves, and pressed the button to deactivate the cloaking field. The air shimmered as the outpost materialized before Antares' eyes. His team raised their weapons, but before they could fire, a series of energy pulses erupted from hidden emitters around the perimeter. The pulses washed over the Kazan, their weapons sparking and dying in their hands. Antares felt his communicator go dead, leaving them cut off from the rest of their forces. "Fall back," Antares shouted, his instincts kicking in. His team retreated, scrambling away from the now visible outpost and its unseen defenses. They regrouped at a safe distance, their backs to the dense alien forest. Antares surveyed his team, noting the confusion and frustration on their faces. "Report," he barked. "Weapons are offline, sir," one of his lieutenants responded. "Communications are down. We're blind and defenseless." Antares nodded grimly, his mind racing. The human had access to technology far beyond what they'd anticipated. This changed everything. Meanwhile, Thax observed the scene from a nearby ridge, his reptilian features twisted in a scowl. He activated his personal long-range communicator, bypassing the local interference. "This is Supervisor Thax to Galactic Council Command," he hissed. "The situation has escalated. The human threat is greater than anticipated. I request immediate reinforcements. Send a fleet. We must contain this before it spreads." Inside the outpost, Alan watched the Kazan retreat on the monitoring systems. He allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction before turning to Zara. "That bought us some time," he said. "Now let's see what else this place can do." Zara's holographic form nodded. "I detect a research laboratory 3 levels below. It contains experimental progenitor technology that may be of use." Alan and Zara made their way to the lab, passing through corridors lined with pulsing bioorganic circuitry. The lab itself was a marvel of alien engineering, filled with devices Alan could barely comprehend. "These are nanobots," Zara explained, indicating a shimmering pool of metallic liquid. "They can repair and enhance various materials at the molecular level." Alan's eyes lit up with possibilities. "Can we use them to upgrade our defenses? Maybe even repair my ship?" "Affirmative," Zara replied. "I can program them for those tasks." As they worked, Alan's mind raced with plans. With these nanobots, he might have a chance of escaping the planet and warning Earth about the Council's aggression. High above the planet's surface, Captain Sarah Boyd stood on the bridge of her stealth vessel, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. The sudden appearance of a massive Galactic Council fleet sent a chill down her spine. "This is bigger than we thought," she muttered. Turning to her communications officer, she said, "Send an encrypted message to Earth Command, code red. Request immediate reinforcements to these coordinates." Sarah's mind whirled with possibilities. A frontal assault was out of the question. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but perhaps a small team could slip through and extract Alan before the Council's forces arrived? "Prep a shuttle for atmospheric entry," she ordered. "I'll lead the extraction team myself." Back on the planet's surface, Antares paced restlessly at the edge of the forest. The sound of approaching footsteps made him turn, his hand instinctively reaching for his useless weapon. Thax emerged from the undergrowth, his eyes blazing with scarcely controlled fury. Your incompetence has jeopardized this entire operation, he snarled. Antares bristled at the accusation. We were unprepared for this level of resistance. The human has access to advanced alien technology. Excuses. Thax spat. The Council was right to send me to oversee this mission. Prepare your remaining forces for a full assault on the outpost. As Thax stormed off to rally the troops, Antares felt a seed of doubt take root in his mind. He'd encountered humans before in his long career as a bounty hunter. They'd always shown remarkable adaptability and resourcefulness, not the mindless aggression the Council claimed. For the first time, Antares wondered if they were on the wrong side of this conflict. Inside the outpost, Alan and Zara worked feverishly to fortify their position. Swarms of nanobots crawled over the facility's walls, strengthening them at the molecular level. Others streamed out to Alan's crashed ship, repairing the damage from the impact. Zara, how long until the ship's space-worthy? Alan asked, his fingers flying over a control panel. Approximately 47 minutes at current repair rates, Zara replied. Alan nodded grimly. Let's hope that's enough time. A proximity alarm blared, cutting through the tense silence. Alan's eyes snapped to the monitoring system. The Kazon forces were on the move, advancing on the outpost from all sides. They're making their play, Alan muttered. He reached for the canisters of bioweapon he'd prepared earlier. Time to even the odds. Outside, Thax led the charge, his personal shield generator humming with energy. Forward, he shouted to the Kazon soldiers. Capture the human at all costs. As the Kazon advanced, a fine mist began to spread through the air around the outpost. Soldiers began to stumble, their limbs growing heavy and unresponsive. Within moments, dozens of Kazon lay paralyzed on the ground. Thax pushed on, protected by his shield. But Antares, watching from the rear, had seen enough. In a split-second decision, he sprinted forward and tackled Thax to the ground. The two grappled in the dirt, Antares trying to disable Thax's shield generator. "This is wrong," Antares growled. "We're making a mistake." With a sharp crack, the shield generator sparked and died. Thax's eyes widened in fear as the paralytic mist enveloped him. His limbs stiffened and he fell still. Antares stood, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He looked up at the outpost, now visible and imposing before him. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his hands in a gesture of peace and began to walk forward. Alan watched Antares' approach on the monitors, his brow furrowed in confusion. What's he playing at? He wondered aloud. His vital signs indicate elevated stress levels, but no signs of aggression, Zara observed. He appears to be surrendering. Alan made a quick decision. Let him into the outer airlock. We'll hear what he has to say. As Antares stepped into the airlock, Alan's voice crackled over an intercom. Talk fast, Alan said. Why should I trust you? Antares took a deep breath. Because I think we've been lied to. The Council's fear of humans, it doesn't add up. And now I've seen what you can do. We need to work together. Before Alan could respond, a new alarm sounded. Zara's holographic form flickered with urgency. Multiple ships entering the atmosphere, a human vessel and a galactic council fleet. Alan's mind raced. The situation had just become infinitely more complex. As he weighed his options, he realized that this unlikely alliance with Antares might be their only chance of survival. Whatever came next, it was clear that the fate of humanity, and perhaps the entire galaxy, hung in the balance. Balance. The sound of alarms blaring throughout the outpost jolted Alan back to the present moment. Multiple ships entering the atmosphere, Zara reported, her holographic form flickering with urgency. A human vessel and a galactic council fleet. Alan's eyes widened. How many? I count at least 20 council ships, Zara replied. The human vessel appears to be a stealth-class frigate. Antares, still standing in the airlock, tensed visibly. We need to move. Now. Alan nodded, making a split-second decision. He pressed a button, opening the inner airlock door. Get in here. We're going to need all the help we can get. As Antares rushed inside, Alan turned to Zara. How long until my ship is spaceworthy? Repairs are at 92% completion. Estimated time to launch, 3 minutes. Alan grimaced. It'll have to do. Prepare for immediate takeoff. The outpost shook as weapons fire from the approaching council ship struck the outer defenses. Alan, Antares, and Zara raced through the corridors towards the newly repaired ship. As they ran, Alan activated his comlink. This is Alan Rogers to the human vessel. Do you copy? A moment of static, then a woman's voice crackled through. Rogers, this is Captain Sarah Boyd. We're here to extract you. What's your status? Complicated, Alan replied, ducking as a section of ceiling collapsed nearby. We're about to launch in a modified ship. Can you provide cover fire? Affirmative, Boyd responded, but make it quick. We're outnumbered and outgunned up here. They reached the ship just as another barrage of weapons fire rocked the outpost. Alan practically leaped into the pilot's seat, his fingers flying over the controls. Antares strapped himself in next to him, looking both wary and determined. Zara, upload yourself to the ship's systems, Alan commanded. The AI's holographic form shimmered and vanished, reappearing on a small projector near the control panel. Upload complete, all systems online. The ship's engines roared to life as Alan engaged the launch sequence. The outpost's roof split open, revealing a sky filled with the ominous shapes of council warships. Alan gritted his teeth and pushed the throttle forward. They shot into the air, immediately coming under fire from the surrounding council ships. Alan's hands danced across the controls, the ship weaving through a hail of energy blasts. Nearby, Captain Boyd's vessel unleashed a barrage of covering fire, creating a momentary gap in the council's formation. Nice flying, Antares muttered, gripping his seat as Alan executed a series of barrel rolls to avoid incoming missiles. Thanks, Alan grunted, his focus entirely on navigating the chaotic battlefield. Zara, status on our defenses? Shields at 78% and holding. The nanobot reinforcements are proving effective against council weapons. As they climbed higher into the atmosphere, the space around them became a dizzying array of weapons fire and explosions. Alan pushed the ship to its limits, relying on its enhanced maneuverability to stay ahead of their pursuers. We've got a problem, Antares said suddenly, pointing at a readout on the control panel. They're targeting us with some kind of energy net. If it hits us, we'll be dead in the water. Alan's mind raced. Zara, any weaknesses in their targeting systems? Analyzing, the AI responded. After a moment, she continued. The Kazan ships in the fleet are using an older targeting algorithm. If we can exploit its predictive subroutines, we may be able to create a blind spot in their network. Antares leaned forward, his eyes lighting up with recognition. I know that system. It has a flaw in its radial tracking. If we execute a series of tight, alternating turns, we can confuse it long enough to slip through their perimeter. Alan nodded, a grim smile on his face. Worth a shot, hang on. He threw the ship into a series of violent maneuvers, corkscrewing through the atmosphere at breakneck speed. Antares called out adjustments, his knowledge of Kazan systems proving invaluable as they wove through the gaps in the council's fire. For a moment it seemed to be working. They broke through the first line of council ships, the open expanse of space beckoning before them. But then a massive cruiser appeared directly in their path, its weapons already charged and firing. Brace for impact, Alan shouted, pulling up hard on the controls. The ship shuddered as multiple energy blasts struck its hull. Warning lights flashed across the control panel as systems began to fail. Main engine offline, Zara reported, her voice calm despite the chaos. Auxiliary power at 30%. We've sustained heavy damage to our starboard side. Alan fought with the controls, trying to keep the ship from spinning out of control. We're not going to make it to open space, he said through gritted teeth. We need to set down somewhere, fast. Antares scanned the navigation display. There, he said, pointing to a nearby celestial body. That moon. Its electromagnetic field might help mask our signature from council sensors. With no other options, Alan angled the failing ship towards the lunar surface. The ride down was rough, the ship bucking and shuddering as it pushed through the moon's thin atmosphere. Alan used every trick he knew to keep them from burning up or smashing into the barren landscape below. Finally, with a bone-jarring impact, they touched down in a sprawling crater. The ship's remaining systems whined and sputtered before falling silent. For a long moment, Alan and Antares sat in the darkness, catching their breath. Then the emergency lights flickered on, and Zara's hologram reappeared. Hull integrity holding, no atmospheric leaks detected. However, long-range communications are offline, and our power reserves are critically low. Alan unbuckled his harness, his mind already racing with their next moves. "All right," he said, turning to Antares. "We're still alive. Now we need to figure out how to stay that way." As if in answer, a sharp knock came from the ship's airlock. Alan and Antares exchanged wary glances before moving to investigate. When the outer door slid open, they found themselves face to face with Captain Sarah Boyd and her extraction team, their expressions a mix of relief and urgency. "Looks like we all had the same idea," Boyd said, her eyes darting to the sky where distant flashes of weapons fire could still be seen. "Now let's see about getting off this rock before the council finds us." Alan nodded, gesturing for them to enter. As the group gathered in the ship's main compartment, he couldn't shake the feeling that their ordeal was just getting started. The real challenge, he suspected, was just beginning. Alan surveyed the ragtag group assembled in the ship's main compartment. Captain Boyd and her extraction team stood at the ready, their weapons primed. Antares, the unlikely Kazan ally, leaned against a bulkhead, his alien features etched with tension. "Zara," Alan called out, "give me a full systems analysis. What are we working with?" The AI's hologram flickered to life. Power reserves at 12%, long-range communications offline, weapon systems operational but severely limited, however. She paused, her digital eyes gleaming. "I've completed my analysis of the progenitor data we acquired. There's something you need to see." A holographic display materialized in the center of the compartment, showing a complex array of energy signatures. Zara highlighted a specific frequency pattern. "This is the resonance frequency of the Council ship's shields. If we can modify our weapons to emit an energy pulse at this exact frequency, we could disrupt their defenses," Alan finished, his mind racing with possibilities. Captain Boyd stepped forward, her expression skeptical. "That's a big if, Rogers. Even if we could make the modifications, we're vastly outnumbered and outgunned." Alan's fingers flew over a nearby console, already working on the weapon modifications. "We don't need to defeat their entire fleet. We just need to create an opening to escape." Antares pushed off from the wall, moving to study the holographic display. "I know their shield configurations. With this information, I can help fine-tune the modifications for maximum effect." For the next hour, the ship's interior buzzed with frenetic activity. Alan and Antares worked on modifying the weapon systems, while Boyd's team reinforced the ship's structural weak points. Zara's voice provided a steady stream of updates and suggestions. As they worked, the distant flashes of weapons fire in the lunar sky grew more frequent. The Council fleet was closing in on their position. "Modifications complete," Alan announced, wiping sweat from his brow. "Zara, how are we looking?" "Weapon systems recalibrated to emit the shield-disrupting pulse. Power reserves at 18% after rerouting non-essential systems." Alan nodded grimly. "It'll have to do. Everyone, strap in. This is going to be one hell of a ride." As the crew secured themselves, Alan eased the ship off the lunar surface. They rose slowly at first, using the moon's electromagnetic field to mask their ascent. But as soon as they cleared the lunar orbit, alarms blared. "Multiple Council ships detected," Zara reported. "They've locked onto our position." Alan's hands tightened on the controls. Here goes nothing. He pushed the ship into a steep climb, accelerating directly towards the heart of the Council fleet. Energy blasts sizzled past their hull as the enemy ships opened fire. "Now," Alan shouted. Antares activated the modified weapon system. A barely visible pulse of energy radiated outward from their ship. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, one by one, the shields of the nearest council ships flickered and died. "It's working!" Boyd exclaimed, her voice tight with adrenaline. Alan didn't waste a second. He targeted the nearest shieldless ship and fired, their weapons tearing through the exposed hull. The council vessel listed to one side, venting atmosphere and debris. The council fleet's formation began to break apart as more ships lost their shields. Confusion reigned as captains tried to re-establish their defenses against this unexpected attack. Alan wove through the chaos, his piloting skills pushed to the limit as he dodged energy blasts and drifting debris. Each time their modified pulse took down another ship's shields, Boyd's team unleashed a barrage of precision fire, disabling key systems. For a few glorious minutes, it seemed they might actually break free. Then a massive ship loomed before them, its hull gleaming with an ominous light. "Vorx," Antares breathed, recognizing the council leader's flagship. The behemoth opened fire, its advanced weapons slicing through the debris field separating them. Alan rolled the ship hard to port, narrowly avoiding a blast that would have cut them in two. "Our pulse isn't affecting his shields," Zara reported, her voice urgent. "They must be operating on a different frequency." Alan gritted his teeth, pushing the engines to their limit as he tried to outmaneuver the flagship, but Vorx matched them move for move, relentlessly closing the distance. "There," Boyd shouted, pointing to a section of space that shimmered with the telltale signs of an asteroid field. "If we can make it in there, we might lose him in the debris." It was a desperate gamble, but they were out of options. Alan angled the ship towards the field, plunging into a maze of tumbling rocks and ice. Vorx followed, his larger ship less maneuverable but far more powerful. Energy blasts shattered asteroids around them, filling space with deadly shrapnel. As Alan threaded the ship through impossibly narrow gaps between asteroids, Antares' console lit up with an incoming transmission. It's a Kazan frequency," he said, disbelief coloring his voice. "An old one. I know this code." "Put it through," Alan ordered, not taking his eyes off the asteroid field. A gruff voice filled the cabin. "Antares, you old scoundrel. Looks like you could use a hand." Antares' eyes widened in recognition. "Krell, how did you find us?" "I've been tracking this little dance of yours for a while now," Krell replied. "Gotta say, you humans know how to put on a show. We're impressed, and maybe a little interested in evening the odds against the council." Alan exchanged a quick glance with Boyd. The offer of help was tempting, but trusting a group of Kazon bounty hunters was risky at best. Before they could decide, Vorx's flagship unleashed another barrage. The ship rocked violently as a glancing blow struck their port side. "Hull breach in Section 3, Zara reported. "Emergency force fields holding, but we can't take another hit like that." Alan made a split-second decision. "Krell, if you're serious about helping, now would be a good time to prove it. We could use some cover fire." There was a moment of tense silence, broken only by the sound of creaking metal and distant explosions. Then, from the edges of the asteroid field, energy blasts lanced out towards Vorx's flagship. A sleek Kazan vessel shot past them, executing a series of daring maneuvers to draw the council ship's fire. "How's that for proof?" Krell's voice crackled over the comm, tinged with savage glee. With Vorx momentarily distracted, Alan seized the opportunity. He pushed their damaged ship to its limits, weaving through the asteroid field with renewed commitment. The Kazon ship fell into formation beside them, providing covering fire as they approached the edge of the debris field. But Vorx wasn't done yet. His flagship began to emit a strange, pulsing energy that made the nearby asteroids shudder and crack. "He's activating some kind of experimental weapon," Antares warned, his eyes fixed on the readings flooding his console. "Whatever it is, it's tearing apart the space around us." As they watched in horror, the weapon's effect intensified. Asteroids began to disintegrate, and the very fabric of space seemed to warp and twist. A localized singularity was forming, threatening to consume everything in its path. Alan's mind raced, searching for a solution. Their ship was barely holding together, and Krell's vessel, while formidable, wasn't equipped to handle this level of threat. They needed a way to contain or redirect the weapon's energy, and they needed it fast. His eyes fell on the console displaying the progenitor technology they'd integrated into their systems. A desperate plan began to form in his mind. "Zara," he called out, his voice tight with concentration. "I need you to run some calculations. If we use the progenitor tech to generate a controlled gravity well, could we contain the energy from Vorex's weapon?" The AI was silent for a moment as she processed the request. "Theoretically, yes," she finally replied, "but we would need to get dangerously close to the focal point of the weapon. The risk of being pulled into the singularity would be extremely high." Alan nodded grimly. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot they had. "I'll do it," Antares said suddenly, stepping forward. "I know Council ship designs better than anyone here. I can pilot a small craft close enough to deliver the containment device." Alan hesitated, studying the Kazan's determined expression. Despite their brief alliance, trusting Antares with such a crucial task felt like a massive gamble. But as another wave of energy from Vorex's weapon washed over them, rattling the ship to its core, he realized they were out of options. "All right," Alan agreed, turning to Boyd. "Captain, I need your team to provide whatever cover fire you can. Krell," he addressed the Kazan ship, "if you're still with us, we could use your help keeping Vorex distracted." As Antares prepared for his perilous mission, Alan and Zara worked feverishly to modify a probe with the progenitor technology. The plan was audacious and dangerous, but it was their only hope of neutralizing Vorex's weapon and escaping this trap. With a final nod to Alan, Antares climbed into the small, agile craft that would carry him into the heart of danger. As the airlock cycled and the craft launched into the chaotic space around them, Alan couldn't help but wonder if he'd just sent the Kazan to his death. The next few minutes were a blur of frantic action. Boyd's team and Krell's ship unleashed a barrage of weapons fire, keeping Vorex's forces off balance. Alan piloted their damaged vessel in a series of erratic maneuvers, drawing attention away from Antares' approach. Through it all, Antares' small craft darted between energy blasts and disintegrating asteroids, steadily closing the distance to Vorex's flagship. The space around them twisted and warped, the weapon's effect growing stronger with each passing second. Just as it seemed Antares would reach his target undetected, a smaller craft launched from Vorex's flagship. Alan's heart sank as he recognized the sleek lines of a personal fighter, no doubt piloted by Vorex himself. "Antares, watch out," Alan warned over the comm. "You've got company." The Kazan's reply was drowned out by static as Vorex's fighter opened fire. Antares' craft rolled and juked, narrowly avoiding the energy blasts, but the evasive maneuvers were costing him precious time and bringing him dangerously close to the weapon's focal point. Alan watched helplessly as the two small ships engaged in a deadly dance, knowing that every second brought them closer to the point of no return. The containment device had to be delivered, or they would all be lost. In a move of either insane bravery or desperate recklessness, Antares suddenly cut his engines. His craft began to tumble, carried forward by momentum alone. Vorex's fighter shot past, unable to adjust in time. With a burst of precision thruster fire, Antares stabilized his craft directly in the path of the energy vortex. He had one chance to get this right. "Now, Alan," Antares' voice crackled through the comm. Alan activated the progenitor technology, channeling every ounce of remaining power into the containment device. A beam of concentrated energy shot from Antares' craft, striking the heart of the vortex. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, with a silent flash that seared itself into Alan's retinas, the energy from Vorex's weapon collapsed in on itself. The containment field held barely, creating a controlled implosion that neutralized the threat. But the victory came at a cost. The resulting shockwave battered all nearby ships, sending them tumbling through space. Alan fought with the controls, trying to stabilize their vessel as warnings blared from every console. As the chaos subsided, Alan took stock of their situation. Their ship was damaged but still functional. Vorex's flagship drifted nearby, its weapons silent and its hull scorched, and there, barely visible among the debris, was Antares' small craft, its power signature weak but present. The immediate threat had passed, but they were far from safe. The remnants of the Council fleet were regrouping at a distance. Krell's ship was signaling for assistance, having taken heavy damage in the battle, and Vorex, though momentarily defeated, was still a formidable enemy. Alan faced a critical decision. Should they attempt to rescue Antares, whose bravery had saved them all? Should they pursue Vorex while he was vulnerable, potentially ending the threat he posed once and for all? Or should they seize this moment of confusion to escape with the invaluable progenitor data and technology they had acquired? As alarms continued to sound and his crew looked to him for direction, Alan knew that his next choice would shape not only their fate, but potentially the future of humanity's conflict with the Galactic Council. The weight of that responsibility settled on his shoulders as he prepared to give his next order. Command. With a deep breath, he made his decision. Zara, plot a course to Antares' last known position. Boyd, coordinate with Krell for cover fire. We're going after him. The crew sprang into action, their movements precise despite the chaos around them. Alan's hands flew over the controls, coaxing every ounce of power from their battered engines. The ship lurched forward, weaving through the debris field towards the faint energy signature of Antares' craft. Incoming transmission from Krell, Zara announced. Put him through, Alan ordered, not taking his eyes off the view screen. Krell's gruff voice filled the bridge. You're either brave or crazy, human, probably both. We'll keep the Council dogs off your back, just make it quick. True to his word, the Kazon ships formed a protective screen around Alan's vessel, their weapons blazing against the regrouping Council forces. Explosions lit up space around them as Alan pushed closer to Antares' drifting craft. We're in range, Boyd reported, but our tractor beam is offline. We can't pull him in. Alan's mind raced, then it hit him. Zara, can we use the progenitor tech to create an energy tether? The AI's response was instantaneous. Affirmative. Reconfiguring systems now. A beam of shimmering energy shot out from their ship, enveloping Antares' small craft. With agonizing slowness, it began to draw the vessel towards their cargo bay. Council ships incoming, Boyd shouted. Vorex's flagship is powering up. Alan gritted his teeth. Krell, we need more time. Yeah, you got it, the Kazan replied. His ships redoubled their efforts, throwing themselves at the advancing Council forces with reckless abandon. The cargo bay doors yawned open as Antares' craft inched closer. Alarms blared throughout the ship, warning of the approaching danger. Just as Vorex's flagship came into firing range, Antares' vessel cleared the threshold. He's in, Zara confirmed. Alan didn't hesitate. All power to engines. Get us out of here. The ship lurched forward, its progenitor-enhanced engines flaring with otherworldly energy. The battlefield fell away behind them as they accelerated to speeds that should have been impossible for a vessel in their condition. Krell's voice crackled over the comm. Nice flying, human. We're right behind you. As they fled the system, Alan allowed himself a moment of relief, but it was short-lived. Alan. Zara's voice held an odd note of excitement. I'm detecting a faint signal from a nearby star system. It matches no known pattern in my database, but it resonates with our progenitor modifications. Alan leaned forward, his exhaustion forgotten. What are you saying, Zara? It appears to be a distress beacon, one that's been active for millions of years. The implications were staggering. Alan exchanged glances with Boyd, seeing his own mix of hope and apprehension mirrored in the captain's eyes. Plot a course, Alan decided, but be ready to abort if it looks like a trap. As they changed direction, Alan opened a channel to their Kazon allies. Krell, we've detected something that might be valuable. Are you with us? There was a pause before the Kazan responded. You humans are full of surprises. Lead the way. Their small fleet adjusted course, accelerating towards the source of the mysterious signal. Behind them, the last of the Council ships fell away, unable to match their speed. As they approached the system, a massive structure came into view. It dwarfed even the largest ships they'd encountered, a breathtaking fusion of technology and artistry that spoke of an advanced civilization beyond their comprehension. "It's a space station," Boyd whispered, awe evident in his voice. Before Alan could respond, the station's defenses activated. Energy fields flickered to life, and weapon ports began to glow with building power. "Evasive maneuvers," Alan shouted, preparing for the worst. But the attack never came. Instead, the defenses powered down as quickly as they had activated. A soft chime from Zara's console drew their attention. "The station systems have scanned us," she reported. "They seem to have recognized the progenitor technology and me." Alan's mind reeled at the implications. "Take us in, nice and slow. Let's see if we can dock." As they maneuvered towards the station, a new alert sounded. Boyd's face paled as he checked his instruments. "Multiple ships just entered the system," he reported grimly. "It's Orcs. He must have tracked our energy signature." Alan's lips pursed. They were trapped between the mysterious station and the approaching Council forces. Whatever secrets this place held, they were about to become the center of a very dangerous game. "Bring us alongside the station," Alan ordered. "Prepare for emergency docking procedures." As they drew closer to the massive structure, its surface seemed to ripple and shift, revealing an entrance perfectly sized for their ship. It was as if the station itself was inviting them in. "This is either the luckiest break we've ever had," Boyd muttered, "or we're flying right into the belly of the beast." Alan couldn't help but agree. As their ship glided into the cavernous docking bay, he keyed the ship-wide comm. "All hands, prepare for boarding. We don't know what we're going to find in here, but whatever it is, it's our best chance against Orcs." The docking clamps engaged with a resounding thunk, securing their battered vessel to the ancient station. Alan took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever lay ahead. "Antares," he called out to the recently rescued Kazan. "You up for a little exploring?" The grizzled bounty hunter stepped onto the bridge, his eyes gleaming with a mix of curiosity and caution. Wouldn't miss it for all the credits in the galaxy. As they prepared to disembark, Zara's voice rang out with an urgency that made them all freeze. "Alan, I've established a preliminary connection with the station's systems. You need to see this." A holographic display flickered to life in the center of the bridge, showing a vast chamber deep within the station. And there, suspended in a field of energy, was something that made Alan's breath catch in his throat. "Is that—" Boyd trailed off, unable to believe his eyes. Alan nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "A progenitor. A real, living progenitor." The implications were staggering. Whatever they had stumbled upon, it was clear that their journey, and the fate of the stars, was about to take a turn none of them could have anticipated. The living progenitor floated serenely in its energy field, seemingly unaware of the chaos its discovery had unleashed. "We need to secure that chamber," Alan said, his mind racing with possibilities. "Zara, can you lock down access?" "Affirmative," the AI responded. "I've sealed all entrances to the progenitor's location." As if on cue, the station shuddered violently. Alarms blared, and red warning lights bathed the bridge in an eerie glow. "What now?" Boyd groaned. Zara's voice was grim. "The star powering this station is highly unstable. Its energy output is fluctuating wildly." Before Alan could respond, a familiar face appeared on the main view screen. Vorax, his expression a mix of anger and desperation, glared at them. "Humans," he spat, "you've led us into a trap." Alan raised his hands placatingly. "We're all in danger here, Vorax. We need to work together." The counselor scoffed. "Work together? So you can claim the progenitor's secrets for yourselves?" Antares stepped forward, his gravelly voice cutting through the tension. "He's right, Vorax. This station holds power beyond our understanding. If we fight amongst ourselves, we'll all perish." For a moment it seemed Vorax would dismiss them. Then grudgingly, he nodded. "What do you propose?" Alan took a deep breath. "We need to stabilize this station and harness the star's energy safely. I suggest we use a fraction of its power to create a limited number of stable wormholes to key locations in each faction's territory." Vorex's eyes narrowed. "And who would control this technology?" "We all would," Alan said firmly. "Shared access prevents any single faction from becoming too powerful. It maintains galactic balance." Krell's voice crackled over the comm. "The Kazan support this plan. It's time we had a seat at the table of galactic affairs." As discussions continued, Zara suddenly interrupted. "Alan, I've detected an anomaly in the station systems. It appears to be a test." "A test?" Boyd asked, confused. Zara's holographic form flickered with agitation. "It's a hidden progenitor protocol. The station is gauging our ability to cooperate. If we fail..." She paused ominously. "It will self-destruct." The gravity of the situation hit them like a physical blow. Alan sprang into action. "Vorex, Krell, we need to form joint teams immediately. Engineers, scientists, technicians, everyone working together to stabilize this station." To Alan's surprise, Vorex didn't argue. The counselor barked orders to his crew, directing them to cooperate with the humans and Kazan. Alan turned to his own team. "Boyd, coordinate with Krell's technicians. Focus on the station's structural integrity. Antares, you're with me. We're heading to the core." As they raced through the station's winding corridors, Alan marveled at the sight of former enemies working side by side. Human engineers shouted instructions to Kazan technicians, while council scientists pored over progenitor consoles. The station shuddered again, more violently this time, and Terry steadied Alan as they stumbled. "The star's instability is increasing," the Kazan observed grimly. They reached the core, a cavernous chamber dominated by a pulsing column of energy. Alan's eyes widened as he took in the intricate network of conduits and machinery surrounding it. "We need to reinforce the structural integrity field," Alan said, studying a nearby console. "But these controls? I've never seen anything like them." Antares peered over his shoulder. "Wait," he said, pointing to a series of symbols. "These resemble ancient Kazan glyphs. Let me try." The Kazan's fingers flew over the controls, inputting a complex sequence. The energy column flickered, then stabilized, its pulsing becoming more regular. Alan grinned. "Nice work." Their celebration was short-lived. Zara's voice echoed through the chamber. "Alan, the star's gravitational fluctuations are intensifying. The station's orbit is destabilizing." Alan's mind raced. They needed something to counteract the gravitational forces, something powerful enough to... His eyes widened. "Vorex," he shouted into his comm. "We need your flagship's tractor beams." There was a moment of silence. Then, to Alan's immense relief, Vorex's voice came through. "Understood. Engaging tractor beams now." The station groaned as the massive council ship exerted its influence, slowly but surely stabilizing their position. As Alan and Antares worked to reinforce the core, teams across the station made breakthrough after breakthrough. Human ingenuity combined with Kazan tenacity and council knowledge, creating solutions none could have achieved alone. With seconds to spare, the combined efforts of the faction succeeded. The self-destruct sequence halted, and the station systems came fully online. Zara's voice was filled with wonder. "The progenitor systems have recognized our cooperation. We have full access to the station's technology and knowledge." A cheer went up from every corner of the station, but Alan knew their work was far from finished. The star's continued deterioration posed an ongoing threat. "We need to move the station," he announced to the assembled leaders, "to a more stable star system." Vorex looked at him incredulously. "Move the entire station? That's impossible." Alan shook his head. "Not with progenitor technology. We can use a combination of their propulsion systems and carefully calculated wormhole jumps." As the implications sank in, excitement spread through the gathered factions, but Alan could see the wheels turning behind some eyes, the calculations of advantage and betrayal. He caught Antares' eye, and the Kazon nodded almost imperceptibly. They both knew that maintaining this fragile alliance would be crucial in the days to come. As preparations for the monumental task began, Alan received an encrypted message from Earth. His heart sank as he read the orders. Ensure human control of the technology at all costs. He looked around at the diverse group working together, at the incredible achievements they had already accomplished. Then he looked at the message again, the weight of his duty to humanity pressing down on him. With a deep breath, Alan made his decision. He deleted the message and turned to address the assembled teams. All right, everyone, let's get to work. We have a station to move and a galaxy to change. As they set about their tasks, the ancient progenitor station hummed with new life and purpose. The star outside continued its dance of destruction, a constant reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. But for now, improbably, impossibly, the beings gathered here had taken the first steps towards a new era of cooperation. Alan knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger, political intrigue, and difficult choices. But as he watched humans, Kazon, and council members working side by side, he allowed himself a moment of hope. Whatever trials lay ahead, they would face them together. Alan stared at the encrypted message from Earth, his eyebrows furrowed. The orders were clear. Secure human control of the progenitor technology at all costs. He glanced around the bustling control room, where humans, Kazan, and council members worked side by side, their unlikely alliance already yielding remarkable results. With a heavy sigh, he caught Antares' eye and jerked his head towards a quiet corner. The grizzled Kazan followed, his expression curious. "We need to talk," Alan said, his voice low. He handed over his data pad, watching as Antares' eyes widened while reading the message. "This complicates things," Antares growled, handing the pad back. Alan nodded. "I can't betray what we've built here, but I can't outright defy my superiors either. We need a plan." For the next hour, they huddled together, speaking in hushed tones and occasionally gesturing at the various factions working around them. As they concluded their discussion, a thin smile played across Antares' face. "It's risky," the Kazon said, "but it just might work." The next day, as final preparations for the station's first wormhole jump neared completion, Alan called a meeting of the faction leaders in the station's primary control room. Vorax and Krell arrived, flanked by their advisors, wariness evident in their postures. "Thank you all for coming," Alan began, his heart racing. "Before we proceed with the jump, there's something I need to share with you." He took a deep breath and activated a holographic display, showing the encrypted message from Earth. "I received this yesterday. My superiors want me to ensure human control of this station and its technology by any means necessary." The room erupted in shouts and accusations. Vorax's face darkened with rage, while Krell's hand instinctively moved to his weapon. "Silence!" Antares roared, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Let him finish." Alan nodded gratefully. "I'm telling you this because I have no intention of following these orders. What we've accomplished here, working together, is too important to throw away for the sake of one species' dominance." The tension in the room slowly ebbed as his words sank in. Vorax studied Alan intently, his expression unreadable. "What do you propose?" the counselor asked finally. "A joint governing council for the station," Alan said, activating another holographic display. "Equal representation from humans, Kazan, and the Galactic Council. We make decisions together, we share the benefits together." Krell leaned forward, his interest piqued. "And the progenitor?" "Remains neutral," Alan replied, "a resource for all, bound by strict protocols we established together." As discussions began in earnest, Alan felt a weight lift from his shoulders. But before they could delve into the details, alarms blared throughout the station, bathing the control room in pulsing red light. Zara's holographic form materialized, her expression grave. "The star has entered its final stage of collapse. We have minutes before it goes supernova." Alan's training kicked in. "Everyone to your ships, link up with the station. We're jumping now." The factions scrambled to their vessels as Alan coordinated with Zara. The AI's voice echoed through the station. All personnel, brace for emergency wormhole jump. This is not a drill. Energy surged through the ancient structure as it drew power from the dying star. The linked ships formed a protective cocoon around the station, their fields merging under Zara's guidance. Jump sequence initiated, Zara announced. 3, 2, 1. The station shuddered violently as it entered the swirling maw of the wormhole. Alan gripped his console, watching as status reports flooded in from across the structure. In engineering, Krell's team fought to maintain power levels. On the outer rings, Antares led a mixed group of humans and Kazon in reinforcing structural integrity fields. Midway through the jump, alarms shrieked once more. Wormhole instability detected, Zara reported, her voice infused with static. The star's death throes are causing severe gravitational distortions. Alan watched in horror as entire sections of the station began to break apart, shearing away into the chaotic void of the wormhole. All non-essential personnel, evacuate to the linked ships immediately, he ordered, his mind racing. Prepare for emergency separation protocols. As crews rushed to the evacuation points, Alan caught sight of Vorax on a nearby view screen. The counselor's face was set in unshakable focus. "Captain," Vorax said, "my flagship's tractor beams can hold the station together, but I'll need to remain aboard to modulate the field strength manually." Alan's eyes widened. "Vorax, that's too dangerous. If we lose the station..." "Then we lose everything," Vorax interrupted. "This is bigger than any one of us now. Do it." With a nod, Alan gave the order. Vorax's massive ship maneuvered into position, its powerful tractor beams locking onto the fragmenting station. Alan felt the structure groan around him as it was pulled back together. "Zara, how much longer?" he shouted over the cacophony of alarms and creaking metal. 30 seconds to emergence," the AI replied, "but the wormhole is becoming increasingly unstable. We may not..." Her words were cut off as a massive gravitational wave slammed into the station. Alan was thrown to the ground, his head striking the edge of a console. Through blurred vision, he saw Antares and a mixed team of engineers racing to reinforce a buckling bulkhead. 10 seconds! Zara's voice echoed, distorted and fragmented. Alan pulled himself up, blood trickling down his face. He input the final commands, praying to whatever cosmic force might be listening. With a violent lurch that threatened to tear the station apart, they burst from the wormhole. Blinding light flooded the viewports as a new star system materialized around them. "Emergency stations," Alan croaked, fighting waves of dizziness. "Damage reports from all sectors. Zara, what's our status?" As the AI began rattling off statistics, Alan allowed himself a moment to breathe. They had made it. In a seemingly impossible way, they had survived. Hours later, as emergency repairs continued across the station, Alan stood with the faction leaders in the control room. The viewport showed a breathtaking view, a stable, yellow star surrounded by several promising planets. "It's perfect," Krell murmured, awe evident in his gravelly voice. Vorax nodded, his usual aloofness replaced by a hint of wonder. "A new beginning for all of us." Alan turned to face the assembled leaders, his expression solemn. "What we've done here today goes beyond any one species or faction. We've been given a second chance, not just for ourselves, but for the entire galaxy." He activated a holographic display, showing a rough draft of an agreement. "I propose we formalize our alliance, the Progenitor Accords, a framework for cooperation, exploration, and the responsible use of the technology we've inherited." As discussions began anew with a spirit of collaboration that would have seemed impossible mere days ago, Alan caught Antares' eye. The Kazon gave him a subtle nod, a silent acknowledgement of how far they had come. Outside the viewport, ships from dozens of species began to arrive, drawn by the promise of knowledge and the chance to be part of something greater than themselves. The station, once a relic of a long-lost civilization, hummed with new life and purpose. Alan knew that challenges lay ahead. Old rivalries and suspicions would not vanish overnight. The temptation to use the progenitor technology for personal gain would always be present. But as he watched the diverse group of beings working together to chart their new course, he felt a surge of hope. They had taken the first steps towards a new era of galactic cooperation. Whatever the future held, they would face it together.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.